It was April 1972, a Friday night, and the three teenage boys, Tom, Dave, and Mike, were cruising down the desolate stretch of Sawmill Creek Road. This wasn't the first time they'd found themselves on the narrow, winding path north of Riley, Oregon, but it was certainly the most eerie. The moonless night made the countryside pitch black, and the only thing cutting through the inky darkness was the dim beams from Tom's old Chevy truck. Sawmill Creek Road was a local haunt, not because of any spooky legends or mysterious happenings, but because it was secluded. If you were looking for a place to sneak a few beers without getting caught or just wanted to shoot the breeze, this was the spot. That night, though, something about the road felt different. It was unusually quiet, even for a remote Oregon backroad. "Man, it's dead out here," Mike said from the passenger seat, leaning out the window slightly as the cool night air whipped against his face. He had a six-pack of beer between his feet, and one of the cans cracked open in his hand. "Feels like we're the only ones left in the world." Dave, who was slouched in the middle of the bench seat, gave him a smirk. "Well, we practically are. There's nothing but sagebrush and jackrabbits for miles." "Riley's what? Population 60? Tom, who was behind the wheel, said nothing, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. The truck's headlights bounced over the uneven gravel, illuminating the winding path that disappeared into the thick forest of pines and firs up ahead. The further they drove, the more claustrophobic the trees seemed to become, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. "Maybe we should turn back," Tom muttered under his breath. He wasn't sure why he felt so uneasy, but something deep inside him told him they shouldn't be out here. "Not tonight." "Turn back? We've only just started," Mike said with a laugh, taking a long swig of his beer. "What's the matter, Tommy boy, scared of a little darkness?" "Shut up," Tom snapped, gripping the steering wheel tighter. It wasn't the dark he was afraid of. It was something else. Something he couldn't put his finger on. "I just have a bad feeling, all right?" "Probably just the full moon vibes," Dave said, although there was no moon at all that night. He leaned back and rested his feet on the dash, trying to act relaxed, though Tom noticed the nervous glances he kept stealing out the window. Minutes passed, the silence growing thick, punctuated only by the hum of the Chevy's engine and the crunch of gravel under its tires. The road twisted and turned, pulling them deeper into the wilderness. Tom was about to suggest they find a spot to pull over when something flashed across the road ahead. "Did you see that?" he blurted, slamming on the brakes. The truck skidded to a stop, kicking up dust into the air. "See what?" Mike asked, sitting up straight, suddenly alert. "Something ran across the road, like a deer or something." "I didn't see anything," Dave said, glancing out the window. "You sure you're not just seeing things?" Tom wasn't sure of anything. He couldn't shake the feeling that something had moved in front of the truck, something fast, but when he peered into the darkness beyond the headlights, there was nothing but the looming trees and the endless road. "I swear something was there," Tom insisted. He let the truck idle for a moment longer, listening to the night. There were no crickets, no owls, just silence. "Well, it's gone now," Mike said, his voice lower. "Let's just keep going. We're almost to that spot by the creek." Reluctantly, Tom pressed his foot on the gas, and the truck lurched forward again. But as they continued down the road, the uneasy feeling in his gut only intensified. The road seemed different. The trees on either side seemed denser, more tangled, and the bends in the road sharper than he remembered. Every turn felt like they were being pulled deeper into something unnatural, something wrong. "I don't remember the road being this windy," Tom said after a few more minutes of driving. "And we should have hit the creek by now." "You're just turned around," Dave said, though there was an edge to his voice. "It's easy to get lost out here." "No, I know this road. I've been down here a dozen times." Tom's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Something's not right. Suddenly, a thick fog began to roll in from the forest, swirling around the truck like a living thing. The headlights barely cut through it, and the world outside the windows turned into a swirling mass of white and shadow. "Where the hell did this come from?" Mike muttered, leaning forward, peering through the windshield. There's never fog like this around here. Tom slowed the truck to a crawl, barely able to see the road in front of him. The fog was suffocating, wrapping around the truck like it was trying to swallow them whole. Maybe we should stop, Dave suggested. Wait for the fog to clear. Stop where? Tom said, panic rising in his voice. We're in the middle of nowhere. Then, out of the fog, the shape of a building materialized. It was an old, weathered house, its windows dark, the wood rotting and gray with age. It sat just off the side of the road, tilted slightly, as if it had been abandoned for decades. What the hell? Mike said, his eyes wide. I don't remember this house being here. Me neither, Tom whispered, bringing the truck to a stop. Should we check it out? No way, Dave said, his voice shaky. I don't like this, man. This is weird. But Mike, always the fearless one, had already opened the door. Come on, guys, it's probably just an old cabin or something. Let's take a look. Against his better judgment, Tom killed the engine and followed Mike and Dave toward the house. The fog clung to them like a cold mist, and the closer they got, the more oppressive the air became. The house loomed over them, silent and decaying. Mike reached the door first and pushed it open with a creak. See? Nothing to it, he said, stepping inside. Tom hesitated, then followed, with Dave close behind. Inside, the house was worse than it looked from the outside. The floor was covered in dirt and dust, and the air was thick with the smell of rot. Old furniture lay scattered about, broken and forgotten, as if the people who had once lived here had left in a hurry. This place gives me the creeps, Dave said, his voice barely above a whisper. Let's get out of here. Before anyone could respond, a sound echoed through the house, a soft, shuffling noise, like footsteps coming from the back of the house. Did you hear that? Mike asked, his bravado suddenly gone. Yeah, Tom whispered, his heart pounding in his chest. Without another word, they turned and bolted for the door, but when they stepped outside, the world around them had changed. The truck was gone. The road was gone. Instead, they found themselves standing in the middle of a vast, open plain under a dark, starless sky. The air was cold, and the ground beneath their feet was dry and cracked, stretching out in all directions as far as they could see. What the hell is this? Mike cried, spinning around in panic. We're not on Sawmill Creek Road anymore, Tom said, his voice trembling. We're somewhere else. The fog had vanished, leaving only the vast emptiness around them. The old house, too, was gone, replaced by a barren landscape that felt impossibly ancient. As they stood there, trying to make sense of what had happened, they saw movement in the distance. Dark shapes, figures, walking toward them across the plain. Who are they? Dave whispered, backing away. I don't think they're people, Tom said, his voice barely audible. The figures drew closer, their forms twisting and shifting in the darkness, their faces obscured. And then, without warning, they began to run, charging toward the boys with an unnatural speed. Run! Tom shouted, and the three of them took off, sprinting across the cracked earth as fast as their legs could carry them. But no matter how fast they ran, the figures gained on them, their footsteps growing louder and louder. Just as one of the figures reached out, its hand brushing against Tom's shoulder, everything went black. When Tom opened his eyes, he was back in the truck. The headlights illuminated the road ahead, the familiar trees of Sawmill Creek Road stretching out in front of him. Dave and Mike were in the truck with him, both staring straight ahead, their faces pale and their hands shaking. Was that real? Mike whispered, his voice barely audible. Tom didn't answer. He just started the truck, put it in gear, and drove, not stopping until they were safely back in Riley. None of them ever spoke about that night again, but from that day forward, they avoided Sawmill Creek Road. They never wanted to know what might be waiting for them out there in the fog, on the other side of time.